Okay, here we are. Hi everyone, if there is anyone watching us.
Well, aren't you an optimist?
Yes, I am. So anyway, somebody would watch this, even if not right now. But
I joined things halfway through.
yeah, and left.
I was teaching. Students were asking me questions, and I kept going, no, just do it. And eventually, somebody said, "We actually do need your help, Mark." And I felt obliged to go over and point and shout at them.
That's awful. That's awful when students need your attention.
And it gets in the way of stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, we always discuss it at school, how much easier and smoother all the lessons would go if there were no students.
In fact, I wonder, what I've got is I've got a device. If the students are getting too, what I call needy, I've got a special device that I use to say enough. Okay, and I'll just get it. I'll very quickly get this. Okay.
So we are here at iBookBinding's live stream, and while Mark is looking for something, for a device,
So what it basically is from somewhere I managed to get one of these hotel little bells that you find on the front desk, and if they get too needy, I just go enough. And it works. It's not a big sound, but it's enough. It's enough to say.
So perhaps Stefan, you should introduce. That she needs introduction.
We already have a comment from a Facebook user, Wu Ting. I'm not sure if I pronounce it correctly, but what am I running into? And that's a great question.
A brick wall.
Unlike all of our live streams and podcasts, we usually start with introducing our guests and saying a couple of words about all this circus we have here. But with Mark is always different.
Sorry, I do apologize. Shall we start again?
No. It's
all right. Okay.
It's already late. We can stop it. That's also not a solution, I guess. So it's iBookBinding's live stream. Today we have a special guest, Mark Cockram, joins us from the United Kingdom, from London. Hi, Mark.
Hi.
Nice to have you. So, a representative, how is it there in these days after the Jubilee?
The bunting is still out, but it's looking a little bit bedraggled now. There are still children wandering around with cakes, and and the last people are just finishing the last tea bag. It's just one of those things. It was a great long weekend, and I'm sure people enjoyed themselves. For me, it was great because I could get on with my own work. Where the studio is, it's on the flight path to Heathrow, and so every minute we get jets coming over. But on Jubilee Day, we had all the aircraft coming over. Mm-hmm. So for about 1 hour, it was just aircraft after aircraft coming over. It was great, but enough.
So you'd be very happy when they finally, and if they finally build this additional runway in Heathrow.
To be honest with you, I'm probably the only person that would say this, but yeah, I will be, because it'll third everything out. It'll mean that there's less congestion. It's far easier to travel. There'll be more jobs created. And there are people saying, we don't want all the noise. But you live in London. There's going to be noise. There's traffic, there's helicopters going over, we've got buses, we've got taxis, all the rest of it. If you want peace and quiet, go to the Arctic or something. because where there is nothing, and that'll be fine. But you want people, they want the advantages of living in a metropolitan centre without the hassle of living in a metropolitan centre, and it makes me giggle. Anyway, sorry.
Okay, and as usual, my co-host Pavel Voronin. He's somewhere there behind the bushes or plants or something. Hi, Pavel. Nice to have you here. This early in the morning, this is pretty untypical for all of us, but I hope some viewers from the Eastern Hemisphere will join us, maybe even from Australia or something. We'll see how it goes.
And if you do, please write us a comment where you're joining us from. Last time we had Eritrea.
Yeah.
I think that was a first, so we're looking for new places and for all places too.
Yeah, definitely. So if you have any questions, as usual, please leave a comment. We'll try to answer them, or we'll keep them for the future live streams or podcasts or something. Please check the links in the description and check our Patreon. The money we get from our patrons is crucial for us to pay for editing of our podcast videos and all other stuff. There are also some links to Mark's Studio 5 and other, places of presence in social media and stuff. So, and today we are going to talk about book distraction, book mutilation, something, changing the physical properties of old books to create something new, and maybe about indestructible books as well, because the one that's in the thumbnail of this video with Margaret Atwood is supposedly indestructible. So it's sort of counterintuitive that we had it on our thumbnail, where it was said about something about book destruction, and then there is this indestructible book. I'm sure there is some melting point after which this book will also,
Actually, I could talk a bit about that. I read into all the press coverage, and I found out what it's made of, what the critical temperatures are, and I think it will be pretty interesting to think about what it takes to make such a book, and is it even usable as a book? Would you like me to show some pictures?
Yeah, sure.
Sure, let's try that. So, first of all, what we're talking about? We're talking about this one-off book made very recently, only a few months ago. It's Margaret Atwood's Handmaid's Tale, and it sold for $130,000 just yesterday. It started from 35K, reached 90K by 1st of June. Yesterday morning it was 100K, and in the last few minutes it reached this sum. So perhaps the most interesting thing about this book is that Margaret Atwood herself tried to burn it with a flamethrower.
Yeah, the most interesting part is the performance.
Yeah. The level of badassery is beyond belief. I can only think of one senior cultural figure from Britain who did something like that, and that was for a movie. It was when Helen Mirren used a 3-meter tall hand machine gun, shooting at, I think, Arnold Schwarzenegger or one of those guys. But anyways, here's the book. And what we know about it is that it's made of. So first, it's made the two outer blocks are made of phenol. What are called? Sorry. Phenolic sheets. So they are usually used in bookbinding just as presses. At least I've only seen them used as that.
But so, is it the same as bakelite?
Something like that, but a bit more modern. So, and it has the temperature of 282 Celsius. So just above the paper burning. What was it? What was how many degrees Fahrenheit?
I remember that it isn't 451 Fahrenheit.
Actually, it is. I found the instruction for fire insurance companies that says precisely that, with links to experiments.
Well, and then I read some articles that it isn't. So we need to make an experiment.
and I did. So interestingly, 540 Fahrenheit, so 1 degree below. So the paper would scorch, but just about. So the next part.
But it's 451. Yeah, and at least in Bradbury's book. So
okay.
Yeah,
the block is sewn using nickel wire, which is 1400 degrees Celsius. The text is printed on black cinefoil. Now it's basically a foil, but it's painted black, and it's used in to modify lighting. If you need to concentrate light, like to make a tube, or to block part of a light and make a shade. But you can see what kind of material it is. It's very wrinkly. So I imagine both sewing it and using it as an actual book. Not an easy thing to do, but
you just need to use an industrial iron, to iron out the sheets at the temperatures of 1500 degrees Celsius or whatever.
But they do take up to 660 degrees Celsius.
Okay, well,
and that is not all. End bands are
the most crucial part of the book.
Are made using woven stainless steel.
Yeah,
that takes up to 1500 degrees. I was trying to there are very few photos of this book, but you can sort of see here are the wires. So they are properly sewn end bands. And perhaps the part that interested me most, how did they actually print it? And there are fire-resistant dyes that take up to 1200 degrees, and you can use an industry standard printer that prints on anything. This machine, it only costs what, 20K or so, but anyone could order a book printed on cinefoil and using these dyes. So if you want a copy of your own, you can make it.
And even if this machine catches fire during printing, the already printed pages will survive. Maybe.
Oh, I really like this last phrase on the auction side. All materials were tested by fire during manufacturing to validate these specifications.
Trial by combat. I should add that I cannot not comment on the unprofessional way how thought this and prepared this description, because in almost all instances, Celsius temperatures are placed in the first place, and only in one there is where it's Fahrenheit in the first place, and that's just wrong. I don't mean that Fahrenheit shouldn't be in the first place. I mean, there's no consistency there.
And the interesting thing about this project as a whole, I think that most of the value clearly doesn't come from the work that was put into the book. It took me a couple of hours to find who actually made it. I found all the designers. Here in one of the interviews, they give the full list of people who made it. And here it is: CCO, CSO, ECD, creative directors, art directors, director of print production, and about 24 people later, in the very end, we find this guy. So he, Jeremy Martin from Toronto, actually made it. I couldn't find anything about him. He has zero web presence, but the company itself, here he is. Jeremy has held every position in the print industry.
Every position.
Every position, yeah, I know. His wide range of experience make him an endless resource for all matters of production. So if you need to make a 100K unburnable book, he's the guy. But how would you know? It would be really interesting to contact him and talk in detail what it took to saw those pages. I can only imagine. The whole thing was made by an ad agency using this Toronto-based company, but that's about all we know. But okay, it's an ad company, but all proceedings go to support American Pen Center. So for those who don't know, Pen Center is sort of an international organization founded in 1920s, I think. And pen means poets, essayists, and novelists. And their activity surrounds two things. They promote writing in all over the world, and they also protect the rights of writers, poets, and journalists. So they did this particular stunt to draw attention to all the book bannings and book burnings that are going on specifically in America. I found this
specifically in the United States, because
America
is different from the United States. I should mention that.
Okay, I have to say that Canada and Mexico also have their share of book bannings, but US takes
there is even more to America. You've mentioned 3 North American countries now.
So a recent article quoted a figure of 1,500 books banned in American schools alone this year. And when I wanted to find a book burning incident, I didn't have to look
for
long too. Yeah, a few months ago we discussed all sorts of book burnings, and again I draw attention to this wonderful article on Wikipedia, list of book burning incidents, and there are a lot of book burning incidents. Including this charming incident, which is one of the most recent. A certain pastor from Minnesota collected his flock for a nice spring outing where they burned lots and lots and lots of books. Mostly Harry Potter and Twilight, but also anything critical of the Bible, which is a broad definition. So here you go. A good and ever timely initiative, and I applaud everyone involved, and bravo to Jeremy Martin, whoever you are. Can I stop this?
Yeah, sure. I posted a link to our talk about book burning and book destruction on Facebook and YouTube. So if anyone wants to check it after we stop talking during this live, obviously, you should definitely go there. And I also wanted to add that every time I see instances like this mass book burning session in the United States, it makes me wonder why the modern United States is so like modern Russia in so many ways.
Yeah. You can't but wonder because we are living. I mean, we here in Russia are currently living through yet another phase of banning of books and organizations
and people.
Yeah. And interestingly, almost all politicians who are pro-banning reference American experience. I mean, why are you pointing at us? Here are Americans banning books in schools. So obviously we're going to ban gay propaganda in schools. And Putin himself compared the sanctions to anti-Russian sanctions to cancel culture. And what did he quote? He quoted American president and, of course, the unnameable author of Harry Potter, because they are both standing for the traditional gender, etc., etc., etc. So Anglo-Saxon world is very good at providing reasons not to defend human rights.
Finally, Mark got something for himself as well, because we are with Pavel pointing fingers at Russia and United States, and Mark is sitting there
very much in the middle. It's basically it's playground rules. If so and so can do it, I can do it, and these things escalate and they escalate and they escalate. Only the future will tell us what the history will be at the end of the day. And one is always questioning the information that one gets, and I think in today's age there is sometimes too much information, and it's very difficult to sort out what is and what isn't. Which is a roundabout way of me saying I have no wish to be involved. It's outside my hemisphere, shall we say? It's but with all these things, there are knock-on things, and it's all of this. And a few years ago, in Southeast Asia, a particular religious group, they burnt a whole library down and over 1 million books or something, because they felt that what was one religion thought was in sort of impacting on their religion, and it's just conflicts of interests, and it's this world gone mad, I think. And there we go. That's.
Was it ever sane?
I don't think it was. No.
That's just normalcy.
Yeah, it is. I mean, this is the power. This is the power of the book, though. Even in today's global communication age, the book is still so much a symbol of knowledge. And knowledge is power, and that people still burn books, I think, is testament to the, as I say, the power of the book. And there we go. I mean, it always reminds me of a Monty Python, The Meaning of Life. And there's a song in it called "Every Sperm is Sacred," and it's almost the same as every book is sacred. So yeah.
You mentioned people keep burning books. Last time we discussed it, I talked a lot about how recent this phenomenon actually is. And when you think about it, there is this association of burning books and medieval times, or maybe Reformation times. But in medieval times, nobody was burning books. Books were damn expensive. You can count mass burning examples of mass burnings of books on one hand in medieval times. Yeah. And even then, when it starts with printing, it it happens very rarely. For example, Nazi book burnings often quoted 1812 Wartburg Festival book burnings, when students are alleged to have burnt many books to support, to celebrate 300 years of Martin Luther himself burning a papal bull. Now, let's unroll that. Martin Luther burned one sheet of paper. Then 300 years later, what they actually did is they collected newspapers, pressed them to look like books, and symbolically burned 5 packs of newspapers to represent burning of books of their political opponents.
Yeah.
So basically, mass book burnings only start in the 20th century. So
well, if you take out of the equation and sort of war and conquest, the Alexandria Library and all that sort of thing,
and Mongol burnings of whole cities, including libraries, but they didn't.
But what a great legacy these students have, you know.
Yes, they must be so proud of themselves.
Spinning in their graves, I hope.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about students earlier. This is one of the problems with students. They go off and do something like that without thinking about what's going to be happening in the future. But yeah, no, it is. It's. I mean, it always strikes me as being really something that's a very powerful, very evocative, very emotive thing. But when an artist burns a book, for example, then it's something completely different and people will applaud that. But when it's done for political reasons or power reasons, perhaps, then people are going, oh, no, you can't do that. Now, a few years ago, there was an exhibition at the Victoria and Albert Museum called Blood on Paper, which featured quite a lot of artists from around the world, and it was to do with the book and their interpretation. There's people like Damien Hirst, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And there was one particular Chinese artist, and unfortunately I've forgotten the name, where you opened the book and it set off streams of gunpowder. And it sort of destroyed the book, but as the book was being destroyed, text and lines and whatever was being created by this burning line going through the book. And of course, what was exhibited was the burnt remains of this book, which I found really quite interesting. And there was a film of it, the artist in action, as it were. And people were going, oh, we shouldn't have done that. But that wasn't the point. The point was it's creation through destruction. And I think that's the difference between an artisan, shall we say, and power people. And it's, they're both making statements, but they're completely different statements. They're sort of poles apart, as it were.
But even for an artist with a pure artistic intent, it can be really difficult to burn a book and not invite wrath of the public. One example certainly comes to mind. There is this Italian surrealist sculptor called Amon. He's very well known for burning objects and putting them inside plexiglass cubes. Perhaps the best known is a burnt violin, of which there are a number in greatest museums around the world. But when he burnt a book and put it into a glass cube, his friends told him not to exhibit it. And actually, we only have photos of it. And what he decided to do instead is he burnt a book and he made a mold out of it. And he made a bronze sculpture, that patinated bronze that looks like a burnt book. So that was acceptable, but only just about.
Just about, but it's, again, it's people's perception. I mean, with me and burying books, People go, oh, you can't be doing that. But I made the book. If it's my choice, my decision, what I do with it, then that's perfectly okay, in my opinion. Now, I too have burnt books, and as one does, usually as a student, seems to be a theme developing here. But and then with the ashes, I mixed it with some gum arabic and stuff, and I made some ink, and I used the ink to print with. So again, it's about destruction and creating. And let's face it, nothing is forever. At some time the Earth will collide with the sun, or vice versa, or whatever. And I think that sometimes people get very, very precious about things. But it's strange that the artist Anon didn't exhibit that particular work. Yeah, that's quite interesting.
But then it was in early 60s, I think. So probably the memories were still a bit too fresh, especially in Italy.
Yeah, maybe a bit raw. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but people were exhibiting their poo at that time. So it's bizarre, isn't it?
We still don't know if it was poo. Nobody opened those cans.
Would you? You may need Margaret and a flamethrower if you do. That's all I can say. It's a great piece of marketing, though. You've got to go with it. You think I've actually got a book of the artist knocking around. It's on the bench somewhere. Of it, and it's there's a picture of him holding one of the cans, going smiling, as if it's baked beans or something, yummy. So it's a great piece of marketing.
There definitely is. There's this thing about sanctity of books, and I also had some personal experience with that, because when I was teaching book restoration classes back in Moscow several years ago, and one of the classes was about working with water damaged books. And one of the things I did, I took a book and dropped it in a bucket of water, and every time I got this reaction from my students.
Yes.
And usually I just took some pulp, books that do not have any monetary and literary value. But anyway, the reaction was always the same, and and I did it only to show what to do with that book, and it was. In my opinion, absolutely justified, but still, the reaction was gold.
The thing is, though, if you, I understand exactly where you're coming from. If you're teaching something, you can't say, right, pretend the book is wet.
Yeah.
You can't do that. Sort of imagine this is soaking wet. It's been in a cellar. It's covered in filthy water. This is what you do. You've actually got to say, right, this book, dunking it, is wet. This is what you do with it, etc., etc., etc. I do a similar thing with when I'm teaching conservators. I in the background you probably see I've got a little microwave in my culinary corner, and what I do is I say, right, fine, to show what happens to books, I microwave books.
Oh.
And their faces, oh. And of course, there's quite a lot of moisture in books anyway, so it comes out and there's this steaming, melting, adhesive stuff, boards warping, and all sorts of things. And their face is very much the same. As you can't do that. I said, well, I just have them. You can't take this back. Right, what are we going to do with it?
You remind me those TV market people who first add stains to a t-shirt and then quickly remove it.
Look how good this is. Look at that, shiny. Yeah, but you've got to. The thing is, you're right about using pulp books and that sort of thing. But if we're talking about destroying books, which basically, arguably, if you put it in a microwave, you're not destroying it, you're altering it. But there are artists who alter books. Now, in a way, what they're doing is they're sort of destroying it to create. Where you've got artists that do make incisions and make sculptures out of the pages and all these wonderful, wonderful, wonderful things. you know, a lot of people applaud it, but equally there are people saying, no, you shouldn't do that. And you're thinking, but again, it's this point of, you know, what is and what isn't. And fortunately, you know, we're sentient beings. We think we're able to make decisions on our own, hopefully. And, you know, to have the choice to say, right, I'm actually going to cut this page out. I mean, it's what collage artists have been doing for years and years and years.
I wanted to show one example.
Yeah.
Just like that. And I mean, I understand where those people who object this sort of practices are coming from. But I think if it is actually art, and I'd argue this is art, then it's okay. And for me, what makes it art are those additional layers of meaning, I think. First of all, it can only work as a pop-up book because it's Phoenix Rising, this one is called. So imagine opening the book, it springs up. And then also there are the connotations of you can burn the book, but you can't destroy the words and they will come back again. So when things like that are done for purely aesthetic reasons, I'm less okay with it. Although, again, maybe I shouldn't be.
We all have, fortunately, we all have our opinions. I mean, if it's been created by somebody with creative intent, then I have no problems with it. It doesn't affect me, and that's fine. I mean, it's like when I make a book, and it goes to a collector, or if it's a notebook that I've made and whatever, I can't say to the person who now owns that book, even though I've made it, they own it, how they should look after it, what they should do, what they can do, what they can't do with it. It's their property. You know, it's like going to your next door neighbor and saying, no, you can't mow your lawn like that. It has to be in this particular way.
Well, there are some people who would do that.
Well, I know, but hey, you know, it's my grass. You know, if you want to mow my lawn, please do. Go ahead and do it. You know, but you know, it's about ownership as well, and what one does with things. I think, yeah. But that's a classic example. Yeah, thank you for showing. Yeah, cool.
Now I'll stop sharing.
I should probably, well, at least that's my opinion. That still you probably, I wouldn't say should, but it would be nice to consider the cultural and maybe monetary value of the book you are intending to damage. Sometimes,
of course, yes.
But yeah, it's a tricky thing. So I wanted to mention a couple of people in the comment section on Facebook, and if there is anybody else, please send a comment, say hi to us. Firstly, there's Timothy from Vietnam, from Timothy Bindery, a very nice guy. We had a lot of talks with, and he makes some interesting stuff, including some tools. And there's also Adeline Ko. Hello, sorry I'm late. Caught in the rain on a scooter, watching this while waiting for my train. And then I asked.
Hi, Adeline.
Yeah, and I asked her about the rain, and she replied, well, the rain didn't put out the fire in this fiery chat. That's absolutely true. And
there's also a third comment from her.
We live in a world where destruction happens every day. Why not make beautiful things while destroying? Win-win.
There you go. Yeah,
that's the attitude.
I mean, it is one of these things. I mean, with work and stuff, people come to me not necessarily because they want their book restoring or repairing or conserving. I do that sometimes, but I do, you know, rebinding and new work. And when a client comes to me, you know, with a dirty old brown book and, you know, with one board missing, and, you know, saying, well, you know, if you want something to replicate this dirty old brown board and that's it, goes somewhere else, and they say, no, I'd like you to put a new binding on it, because what is the important thing? Well, it's the text block that's the important thing. You know, generally, you know, books are rebound, they are recovered throughout their age, and it is one of these things. So I end up with a stack of boards. Now, theoretically, I was talking with a restorer of a certain age, shall we say. You know what I mean? And this restorer was saying, well, you should actually, respect the original maker's hand, and you must do this, and you've got to do this and everything else. And I thought, well, that's great, but that doesn't pay my bills. And, at the end of the day, I've got to make a sort of a living. And this restorer works for a organization, so they don't actually have to worry about that sort of thing. They can spend a month working on one corner like that. And they go, look at that corner. Brilliant. It looks damaged, just like the other one. You think, so there is that aspect to it. But this restorer actually did say, you've destroyed the original binder. I'm thinking it wasn't original. This is a rebinding. I can tell it's a rebinding because it's, et cetera, et cetera. So it wasn't original. And it goes on. But again, it's people's perceptions. It's what's important to them. But at the end of the day, again, it's about ownership. If the person who owns that textbook wants a new binding put on it, put a new binding on it. Why not? I've got no problems with it. So
and what do you do with all those old blocks?
Do you have some examples to show?
Yes, I do. So so I did that. I led into that quite nicely. But what it is, so what I mean is hang on a sec, I just get so I end up with a load of stuff like this, boards and stuff, and you think, a bit of old leather,
But they aren't half bad.
The smell, and you think, because when you walk into an antiquarian bookshop and it's got that very distinctive smell, it's got like that. What you're actually smelling is red rot. You're smelling the decay of leather. That's what you're doing. And people say, "Oh, it's such a nice smell," and I'm thinking, "No, it isn't. It's the smell of death."
Come on. Out your ray of sunshine, 9 a.m.
Well, somewhere it's already afternoon.
You should have told a smell of old people and old knowledge, and I don't know. You could have come up with something.
Okay. All right. But what you're smelling there is books. But no, this is what I mean when I said before, nothing lasts forever. It's like if when I was younger, I lived in a thatched house. Now, it wasn't the original thatch. The thatch had been replaced every 20 or so years. So, it's just
it's like with the oldest temples in Japan. They are 7th century, but they are rebuilt once a century.
Yeah. So everybody goes on about, look at that. 7. You think, my home city is the city of Lincoln, which is a beautiful place to visit for a weekend if you've got a weekend spare. And they have a beautiful library in the cathedral, which the original one, I think, was burnt down during our Civil War a few centuries ago, where there was book burning there as well, I think. And the library was burnt down, and the new one was designed by Sir Christopher Wren. So it's a beautiful library, totally out of sync with the origins of the cathedral, which are sort of 10th century, 11th century, that sort of thing. And everybody goes, "Oh, it's wonderful, it's wonderful, it's wonderful." So it's a relatively new cathedral library. And, they do have some examples of, the original books from the original library. But this is one of the things, the library is constantly evolving, it's constantly changing. And what's important now will not be important in 300 years' time, as it is with books that are 300 years old now. They're not as important, so they're not relevant to where we are and where we're going. From a historical perspective, very, very important, because they do give us those foundations. But again, it's about what is important to the individual. So again, so I end up with stacks of old boards, which, I use for coasters, put my mug of tea on and that sort of thing. And sometimes I actually do something, I sort of re-put them together. And sort of, I do my conservation bit. I use a bit of Clusel G, a bit of SC 6000 to arrest the interesting smell of red rot, and it's very pleasant actually. And I do stuff with them. Usually it's just to try out and see what happens, but I enjoy doing it. I do a little bit of collage work, and I do this sort of thing as well. So though basically they're old boards, I try and reinvigorate them. I give them a new lease, a different direction. And if you look at old car restorers, there's now this thing about actually using old bits that are rusty on cars. You see it in these chop shop TV programs, and why not? Yeah, I'm all for that sort of thing. To show the patina or patina of the age. That's the interesting thing, perhaps.
So, Adeline wanted to add a bit proper, scientific stuff to our talk of death and decay. Oh, and cool. She commented ketones, aromatic hydrocarbons, and such. So,
yeah, that is so typical of Adeline. That is.
I also wanted to add, maybe stepping back a bit to this book that Pavel have shown us, that in some cases, some books were so overproduced, and especially for both of us, for Pavel and for me, with our Soviet past, we definitely know about overproduction of books and other paper materials. Because, for example, when you are visiting a medical institution in late 90s and maybe even early 2000s in Russia, they still use these Soviet blanks, Soviet templates that were printed in millions, and that were just stored in some warehouse. And that was definitely, when you think about overconsumption and overproduction, most often you think about the United States in the first place. But then there was another side of this in the Soviet Union. And for example, one of my favorite bookbinding tutorials, one of my first bookbinding tutorials was, it is called bookbinding tutorials for schools or something like that. And it was produced in 3 printings, total of 4 million copies or something. So I don't think it was ever properly used in this quantity. And of course, there were books by Brezhnev that were printed in tens of millions of copies, and every person had to have it, and nobody cared about them.
Yeah. I mean, you're quite right. I mean, so many books have ended up in landfill sites. Remaindered, sold for less than they were actually cost to produce, and all sorts of things. And yet you don't get people standing on the side of rubbish dumps saying, no, you can't dump those books or anything else. Again, what do you do with them? Well, pulp them up and reuse them to make more books, I guess. So it's one of these things. I mean, even in the materials we use in bookbinding, if you look at the boards that we use, for example, grey board, what I call it, which is used for standard book binding, case binding, that sort of thing. If you look at it closely, you can see the flecks of recycled material. Now, recycling, there's nothing new in that with the book. Books have been recycled since day one. It is one of those things. And so when you're looking at stuff, you're not actually seeing what the original was. It's difficult for me to explain, and it's this constantly evolving, rolling thing that's happening. It's like a palimpsest, I think that's the correct pronunciation, of reusing parchment, cleaning it off and reusing that. Now, we don't know what's been lost, because somebody says, oh, that's 50 years old. That we don't need that. Clean it off, reuse it again, and they've used it again. I mean, again, why not? That's a lot of people do that.
But I think nowadays artists often try to underscore the reused nature, not to hide the text that was, but to show, because it often adds As with all palimpsests, in the recent decades, we learned to love them because they provide so much information.
Yeah.
So I think it's good when you do not completely destroy, do not hide the nature of material.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I mean that again. It is one of these things, but again, it depends on how far you want to do it, etc., etc., etc. And it's artists that physically use books to make walls and all sorts of things, and interesting sculptures from the books themselves, and not hiding the fact that it's made from books. They're actually celebrating the book as a creative medium, a creative material, and because the majority of people around the world are very familiar with the book, the concept of the book, the idea of the book. To see a book being used in a different way is always going to be quite interesting. It makes me always sort of quite happy to see that sort of thing happening. So it sort of reinforces my belief that the book is so versatile. It's not just for looking at reading, it's something else perhaps.
Let me check your sensibilities on that one. Let me show
sure. Will I be shocked?
Work. No, not shocked, but still, I think there are moments when it goes a bit too far.
Too far.
So
well, if I walked into something,
who would judge?
Oh no. What about this one?
Oh yeah, why not?
You mean the socks on the right? Never mind.
Sorry. I mean.
Yeah, I have got no problems with that. I mean, it's almost like book performance art. It's an installation piece. It's rather like, a library is an installation. That's the way I look at a library or any collection. It's an installation. That's an installation piece.
I have a question about why books. What is the message of that apart of, oh no, books?
Well, yeah, there is that. Again, well, look, if they're remaindered or they're going to a landfill site, it's a very cheap medium to use. It's something that is being taken out of context and put into a new context to create something new. Now, that's what a book does. It takes us somewhere else. And that the book is used as a different way of working with creative art, if you like, being creative within the arts. Why not? And as we can see, it's not solid, it's hollow.
Yeah.
It's
not books all the way down. But I don't know. I read a bit about locations that she used, and they're not particularly book related. It's just her medium.
Yeah.
It does have an interesting texture. You want to come and touch it, and it's exactly what you were saying. The fact that you immediately recognize that it's a book.
Yeah. This is one of the things. When if you're looking at sculpture, people see what's finished. You don't say, "Well, that's a piece of marble." But the artist, when they get their piece of marble, the sculptor, they get that block of marble. They see what's inside that marble. They see it, and again, if you're using the book as a medium, you see what else can be done with the book. In a way, that's the book being altered. Now, it's a lot of people. They alter books. They paint over the pages and they put their own stuff in, or etc. 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 So again, that's another creative medium. It's extending how we see the book or use the book, perhaps.
Also, I remember lots of discussions while I still was living in Moscow, and I saw some. All the time, libraries throw away some old books, and it may be the books that are of no use anymore, as Mark mentioned, and sometimes it's just damaged books. No use, maybe because of the damage or because of the content. Because once again, nobody wants to read all these Brezhnev's. I don't know.
Exactly. Or to get it repaired, it's cheaper and more cost effective to buy a new copy.
Yeah.
So it's like computers. Nobody bats an eyelid of well, people do because they are expensive, but of renewing your computer every so often or buying a new printer. Nobody seems to think about that. It's like ebooks. It's nobody seems to say, oh, my ebook's 10 years old, I need to replace it with it. done. There's no problem.
I had an experience once of repairing literally hundreds of books for a school's library, mostly spines, reinforcing spines, but still it's a simple work. It's not a very expensive work because it's repetitive and you can do a lot of books simultaneously. But still, you need to make this calculation. Where is the work is more expensive than just buying a new book?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's time to throw away a book.
Well, yeah, or put it to one side in a cave somewhere in a desert.
Yeah.
To let people find it a few hundred years down the line and go, oh, look at this. Somebody, I mean, that sculpture we were looking at, it's somebody else's rubbish.
Yeah. I also wanted to, everybody is sharing. I also wanted to share a couple of photos. Just give me a moment from The Hague. I have.
You can have as long as you want.
Thank you, Mark. Somebody understands me.
Speaking of books in caves, I wonder if anyone started doing that. I mean, that would be a nice artistic project, hiding really good books really well.
Books and caves. Here it is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes. I mean, again, that's it's using the book as building material, and in a way, when you think what a book is, a book can educate, it builds. We can build upon that. Yeah, why not?
No, something also. Anyway, so it's a children's book museum in The Hague.
Oh, fantastic!
It's in the Royal Library. It's located in the Royal Library, and there are lots of interesting exhibitions there for adults as well, and temporary exhibitions and permanent exhibitions. And they've used some books to build some caves. So.
I think that's great. I'd look at it very tongue in cheek and go, yeah. But if that were to be put away, stored somewhere in a vault, and then opened 1,000 years in the future, it would be a thing of awe and wonderment. And you'd get, conservators going, oh, look at all of that, and, finding work for the next 100 years for themselves.
We've talked about Genizas to several people who specialize in them. Those rooms in synagogues where they put everything written in Hebrew so that it slowly deteriorates. And it doesn't if it is in Cairo, say. Well,
I mean, basically, with a lot of religions, to destroy the word of God or whatever, your deity, etc., is forbidden. You just don't do it. But if you don't look after it, you just put it somewhere, you yourself haven't destroyed it. You're just leaving it there. And that's what it's about. So again, we're looking at other people's rubbish. Yeah.
So there is another comment from Adeline. Well, it beats simply incinerating them. Like Mark said, it's a new lease of life for a book if it's used in a book sculpture or in some performance. Yeah. Or even if you incinerate it during some performance.
Yeah. I mean,
why not?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to physically do stuff. I mean, it's like you putting a book in a bucket of water to show your students, what you do with a book that's been in water. If the book is part of a performance, well then it's used. That's where. I mean, recently I went to a local theatre, and there were a couple of books as props, and they were sort of using these books as props. Now that it's a book made, it articulates, it opens, but after the performance, after the run, that'll be thrown away.
Yeah.
There aren't enough prop rooms to keep every prop, so it is one of those things. But I mean, where do we draw the line?
So there is another comment from and Pavel already reacted to it. I also didn't understand it fully from Wu Ting. Do you have other interesting examples for exhibits or exhibiting handbound books? I'm not sure. Exhibiting handbound and destroyed books, or handbound and repurposed books, or what?
Yeah,
So
exactly. Well, I mean,
By the way, Mark, how do you usually display your buried books?
That's a very good question, actually. Well, basically, when they're unearthed, they have to go through a drying process, and then one has to look after them and arrest decay and all sorts of stuff. So there's an element of freezing. So you've got to have a little bit of knowledge about what you're doing, otherwise you end up with just this mound of stuff. And basically, what I do is, it just so happens I've got an example here, or two. So basically, what will happen is I literally just stand it up or have it with mirrors and things, so that you can see both the binding and the structure, and it opens, it articulates. It's still a book, but we've seriously got quite a lot of stuff happening there. So yeah, I mean, some people would say it's destroyed. Some people say it's been given a new life. This doesn't smell of red rot. It smells of something else. I don't know what it is. But it's quite a. I think it's quite a beautiful thing. And I
like to think about how future conservators will store them in a separate room, very much separate from everything else.
Yeah, well, it actually is one of those things, because it just so happens. What I have started to do is, and this is a few years ago now, with a buried book, you actually put it into its own little case, so that other exhibitors don't go, I don't want my work near that. Yeah. Why am I next to this sort of thing? So again, there are different ways of doing it, and it depends on the exhibition. What I try and do is I try and make the text block as accessible as possible. And what I've started doing in my own little exhibition space is putting images of the interior or the exterior of what I'm either showing or displaying or whatever, to give a little bit more background information. Because I think this is one of the things with a painting, it's stuck up on the wall, and it's usually just got the one surface, which everybody goes, oh, that's lovely. Oh, beautiful. With a book, it's a far more complicated thing, in that it's structural, it's articulated, if it's for a design binding, the various materials that are being used, et cetera, et cetera. If it's historical work, there's so much to it. People come to the book with wanting to know different things. For example, for me, it would be, how has the thing been made? For calligraphers, it'd be, what hand have they used? What ink? So there are lots of different things, different stratas and different ways of looking and finding out about the book. That it is arguably, I think, one of the most difficult things to exhibit successfully. And I've been trying to make a short film about one of a particular book that I'm going to be starting work on. It's for a commission, about creating a 10-minute film of the working process, the design process, the material processing process, if you like, et cetera, because that way there'll be a record of it for the future. And I think, again, it's difficult. The book is beautiful, but it's difficult to exhibit successfully.
And have you tried augmenting real-life exhibitions with video materials? Because it's not often. Often galleries don't really want that, because it detracts from the object. Yeah,
it is difficult. I mean, I have tried to do it, and I have tried to, have in a couple of exhibitions which I've sort of curated outside of my place, tried that. And it's very difficult to actually get people to, get off using their iPhones and use a decent camera to take images and stuff and films. And a lot of people just don't want to do it. It's just too much work. But I think it adds to the story of what's happening. So again, fortunately, because I've got my own space, I can do whatever I want with it. And I'm going to be using an iPad. It's relatively small. It's unobtrusive. It's easy to turn on and off for those of us who are not technically minded. And so, including myself. And so, it's something that perhaps I can do, It's not rocket science. And I think that, to give more background gives more information. More information means more knowledge. And people, if they've got more knowledge, are able to appreciate more what they're physically looking at. Instead of saying, oh, it's a book. Oh, it's another book. It's, there's so much more to it. That's what I feel.
Mark, you've mentioned ink for calligraphers, and I just remember that we try to have road trips to all the different places in France and around during the weekends. And a couple of weeks ago, we went to some small town, and there was this small church where there was some old Bible or something exhibited within one of the in one of the chapels. And I saw it, and I was like, I was calling my wife, come over here, look, there is iron gold ink, it's oxidation, and it's being destroyed with time. And she was like, oh yeah?
Yeah. It's whatever floats your boat. It is one of those things. So it is, for me, it's quite funny. It really is. I think one of the recently, I know it's just before lockdown, I happened to be at a venue where work was being exhibited, and there was a small group of people, and the people that were in charge of the exhibition space, this was at Maggs Brothers in Bedford Square in London. They said, Mark, do you want to talk about some of the work? And it was great because they were able to ask direct questions and able to give immediate answers about technique or the relationship between the textbook and the binding and all these different things. And again, it's about empowerment. They know more, and that was a great experience, because normally as an exhibitor you go to the private view for the cheese and wine, and then you that's it. You're not it's somebody else's responsibility to go there and look there, but to physically be there to explain it, I found, for me, extraordinarily enlightening, because I found out what people are interested in, and again, different people, different interests. I mean, it's the iron gall ink and yeah. Moving on.
So we've got a couple of more comments about expanding on this previous question. So instead of you using a book, I guess, as a media, but showing its content, and then will you allow people to flip over your exhibit books? And okay, and
this is the interesting one.
We had an interesting experience, both Pavel and I, with a copy of Gutenberg's Bible back in Moscow. We visited an exhibition dedicated to one of the Gutenberg Bibles that is held in Moscow. And there was
held hostage, by the way.
Okay, held hostage, yeah. And there was a copy which was exhibited not within this plexiglass coffin or something, but just on a table. And I was like, yeah, I can touch it. I can flip through the pages. And I went there really fast and started browsing through the book. And then a guard beeline to me like, you can't do this. Stop it. You need to have gloves, and even then you can do it. Why is it lying there in the open?
It's a very interesting comment. Actually, it's a very interesting question. The book is meant to be held. It is meant to be looked at, and it is. I think the problem is, if a book is in an exhibition venue and everybody that visits the exhibition picks it up, flicks through it, in a very short period of time, it's going to get damaged. And if you're selling your work, you can't sell damaged work unless it's an art piece, and that's part of the process of creating the art, as it were. But again, a number of years ago, I was exhibiting at a gallery called Flow Gallery in London, where all the books were open. They weren't under any protection whatsoever. People were, asked if they wanted to see a book, to ask one of the members of staff, and the member of staff put their gloves on. and very gently pick it up and do, like this precious artifact and everything else. So there's that way. And if the person was known to the staff, then yes, that person, they could put their gloves on and pick it up and that sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, it's a problem. I suppose it's like, if you're a canvas artist, you don't necessarily have that problem because it's very much a visual thing. But with the book, it's a very tactile thing. Again, we're getting back to, it's held in the hand. For it to physically work, you've got to hold it in the hand, unless it's something huge where you...
Well, I've seen a couple of attempts to automate this. There are these sort of robots, but they can usually only flip back and forward, or maybe a few pages. It's better than nothing, but even that you can't do that too often. If you open on the same page, it will. It
is a phenomenally difficult thing, which is, I think it's going to be one of those questions that will be asked forever. And there'll always be this sort of hedging around different aspects of it. I suppose if you really want to, look at a book and is to ask and take it from there. If people say no, then you can't. If people say yes, well, then you can. I suppose it depends on the individual and the book and everything else in the exhibition context. Yeah, it's difficult. It's a question that I've asked myself countless times, and I'm sure anybody else who exhibits books has asked themselves countless times. I've even tried using it. These jewelers' display stands that sort of revolve very slowly. I've tried using those, all sorts of things. With the book, with the pages gently spread out, with the book open and everything else, so you get this 360 degree. But if you've got an exhibition of 100 books, and then they're each on one of these little displaying stands, number one, it's going to make you very giddy very quickly, seeing all these dancing, revolving books. Actually, it's a nice idea. And the amount of money it's going to cost, to buy these things and then power them, all of a sudden you're thinking, and then what are you going to do with all these display stands that are whizzing round once the exhibition is finished? You've got to find somewhere to store them.
Or you just build a business on exhibiting books. Without any profit.
I'll make a note of that.
This reminds me a little story from the memoirs of a Russian philologist, Gasparov. He wrote that when he first visited, and it was like early 30s, he first visited a private collection of books. He was a young, eager student. He's never seen an old book before. And he decided to, and he's seen a collection of journals from early 19th century with first editions of Pushkin. And he decided to impress his host and ask him, have you read this? This is the first edition of that and that. The host was outraged. He said, young man, I never read books. That's what destroys them.
That brings to mind, there's a bookbinder, a very famous bookbinder in the UK, sadly passed away a few years ago, called Philip Smith. And he's well known for a number of different aspects to his work and things. And he was relatively groundbreaking when he was working, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, I suppose. And he did a book wall, which is Lord of the Rings, and I think it was 12 books, and they had this big design going all over them, and they were put into this plexiglass wall, as it were. And one of the comments from people that were looking at it, I said, well, I can't read it. He said, well, these aren't to read, buy a reading copy. Buy a paperback sort of thing. So it's a very, very, very similar thing. But again, that's the book being altered, because in theory, one has destroyed it because you can't access it. Is that a form of destruction? I don't know. It's an interesting point. If you ignore something, it ceases to exist. If you can't access that information, it's not there. So did he destroy it? That's a topic for a philosophical conversation over a glass of wine and some cheese, I think.
So, well, next time we'll bring wine.
A bit late in the day.
Can we make it in the evening, please?
Yeah, sure. Well, we already had this experience during our Christmas special, and I think it went quite well. And not everybody was drinking, but
I can't remember much about that, to be honest. I think
you definitely do.
So and then exhibiting books is really an issue, and it's something that we discussed quite a lot on our podcast before.
Yeah.
With you, Mark, with Katie Abbott, with Kate Holland, when she was talking about your recent and previous projects, when you need to exhibit books that are strange in some ways, that are not typical.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you start getting out of I recognise the format of what the book is. That's where problems are compounded. You know, it is extraordinarily difficult. I mean, I don't envy curators with any art form, any creative output. It's always going to be very, very difficult. But when you're looking at a book, you're looking at a collaboration between different artisans, you know, the paper maker, the guy or the person that has designed the type, the person that's done the printing, the person that's made the ink. There's so many different aspects coming together from so many different angles. It's alchemy, if you like. That, you know, what is the important thing about the book? Well, the important thing, I suppose, from my perspective, is the totality of the book, the wholeness of the book, everything in its right place, in its right order, if that is what one is looking at. Obviously, you know, things don't have to be in the right order, etc., etc., etc. So again, it is a celebration of collaboration. And again, it's just like, again, your iron gall ink scenario. You know, what is important to one person is not important to the other person. No matter how or what you do to exhibit a book, there's always going to be people who are going to be disappointed. You know, if you're exhibiting the cover, the binding, people say, well, you know, what's the print like inside? So you know, right, show the print. Then you get someone to say, oh, what's the binding like? You think, oh, turn it round, do it again, and do it again. And you're not going to please all the people all the time. You know, and I suppose, you know, you know, if you want, you know, to, you know what it's like, buy the thing.
Let me show one more image. I think you may know what this is, and you probably know who this is.
Yes, yeah. It's for a stage production, Scottish.
Yes, it's John Byrne, and he made this giant book with every page being a pop-up and illustrating a scene from a play. Yeah, and they took it on the road, and they toured for a year.
Yeah, I mean, it's a remarkably beautiful and wonderful thing. You know, it was usually transported on the roof rack of a dilapidated sort of van for. What are they called? Yeah, anyway, one of these, you know, builders' vans and that sort of thing. In the weather, in the wet, everything else, you know, going to schools, going to local theatres, etc., etc., etc. It's remarkable that it's lasted, and it really is. I mean, it's a beautiful way of using the book outside of what we would normally think of what the book is. You're right, it is. It's a beautiful, huge, wonderful pop-up. You know, it always makes me smile when I see it. That it's lasted, you know.
Yeah, and I recently watched a small video on how they turn a page, and it's a special operation. Like 10 people are involved.
Oh, this is in the museum where it is. Yes. Yeah. Which makes me laugh. There's 10 conservators all with gloves, gently doing it. And this thing in its life would have been thrown all around. Grease-painted actors, you know, just got to get
and they talked about how every page turn actually destroys it a little bit. Some bits fall off, but if you don't do that, people don't see it. Why does it exist then?
Yeah, exactly.
That would certainly destroy it much more certainly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, if people don't know it, then it is destroyed. It's not there. It ceases to exist. And again, for me, it's a wonderful, wonderful creation. And I think the way, because it's been used, because it's been loved, and because it's been part of something else, a bigger thing, It's being part of a production. Just adds to the allure of this particular piece, this particular book, this particular art installation piece, if you like, of a book.
I'll stop sharing now.
I should. There is another comment. In this way, anything can be a book, and that's a good question, and something we talked about with many of our guests, and I will probably add a link a bit later on the discussion that was dedicated to this question. But if you scroll back a bit, and if you check the photo Pavel showed us, you can see the spine and the stitching down below. So it's really a book. It's just a large book.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, it's necessary to point, what is a book? Well, it depends on your definition of what a book is. It also depends on the materials. I mean, I've made a book out of ice that, you could only view in a freezer. That didn't last long. But what is a book? Well, some people think that, the early scrolls are books. Well, is it a book? Well, yes. If you want to say it's a book, then it's a book, Again, this is about individual interpretation of what is and what isn't. And I try to be as open as I possibly can.
Because, your diptychs and triptychs.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, yeah. I mean, it's a book. Yes, it's a book. In my very small opinion, it's a book. I mean, I work with diptychs. Again, looking at, older things. I mean, again, if we go back to stuff, I mean, this is a couple of old boards. What I've done is I've recessed them and put beeswax in there. So again, it's about reusing. Now, for me, that's a book. Okay, it's a book with just 2 pieces, but it's articulated, it carries information, it's a number of things coming together. It's upcycling and recycling, new life, new things. And again, it's about, combining, and this is a very recent thing that I've started doing. This is using, reused parchment, hinging 2 boards together to produce a book, in my opinion. You can't actually see, but this is a print technique I've been working on. There is actually imagery on here, but you've got to get it in a certain light to see it.
So I posted a link to our talk with Kaja Rantakari, a Finnish author and book artist and bookbinder, and she showed us some quite experimental books and book forms she's made, and that's to add to the discussion what is a book and what isn't a book. And
I mean, she uses mirrors and flowers and stockings and bugs and
exactly. I mean, it is. You look at a book on a shelf and you say, that's a book. Now, a book on the shelf is completely different to a book in the hand. Yeah, it is the same thing. And there is this change, this metaphor, this metamorphosis process that happens as you take it off the shelf. You open it, it becomes something else. And again, it depends on your interpretation of what a book is and how you interact with that object, that thing, whatever it is. And, I look at, walking down the street, 2 leaning pieces of wood. Well, to me, that's a book. I mean, we've used wood to make books with. We've used metals to make books with, and the Korean books that are made with pieces of brass and that sort of thing. You'd be surprised what is and what isn't. Again, and that's down to individual interpretation and experience and knowledge.
And the very first books were made out of mud.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the Sumerian tablets, and the little bit of this and that going on in it. That's absolutely fantastic. And it's also in ancient Egypt, they would use the stone that they carved out of the caves in the Valley of the Dead or whatever it is, and those are notes. And they were thrown into a rubbish pit, and there's tens of thousands of them. And now archaeologists are able to actually define so much from basically that rubbish pit. It's quite incredible. And again, what do you call a book?
And there's also the opposite impulse to make those examples were of accidental survival.
Yeah.
But then there were books that were carved into stone, like the Buddha, one of the sacred Buddhist texts was carved into 2,000 stone panels.
Yeah. Again, I mean, for me, that's again, it's a book. We're looking at we were talking about America earlier, but if you go to this, the South bit, South, the books were knotted pieces of string, stuff like that. Again, it's about using materials you've got to hand, how you interpret what you're using, and how others interpret what you've made. And I think that's very important because if you look at a collection of string, well, to somebody that doesn't know that it actually contains information, it's just a collection of string. It's not a book. But if you know that it is information, it becomes a book, as it were. So again, it's like anything. You can. This is the concept of the book. I may not understand what the contents are, maybe in a language or a way of sharing or keeping that information or whatever. I may not understand it, but I know what the concept of the book is. And if you can extend that out and say, right, well, theoretically, anything could be a book. This room could be a book, if I so decided it was, because I open the door, it hinges. The door opens like a book. So if I were to stretch a point, I could say, yeah, this is a book.
I think Richard Minsky made a book that you could enter through into a room. Yeah.
I mean, it's the German artist makes books out of lead. Anselm Kiefer. I mean, those are walk-in books. They're huge things. They're made of lead. They're made of metal. They've got sunflower plants in them and all sorts of things and dresses and all that sort of stuff. Absolutely fantastic. The Guggenheim in Bilbao, I fortunately stumbled, as one does in Bilbao, over this exhibition. I was mesmerized by it because obviously I've seen, the work in books or online or whatever medium one is engaging with, but to actually physically see them and get close to them and see it as a sculptural endeavor, it's something else. And this takes us back to the artist who was creating those fountains, those water spouts of books, if you like, those flows of books. It's about, taking something that we're very familiar with, but putting it either into a different context, using it in a different way, or abstracting out, making it this huge thing that you think, wow, this is wonderful. And again, miniatures. You go, look at that. It's this thing. I think it's wonderful. And it's great.
So we have a couple more comments, and I'll just go through them pretty fast. So again, from Wu-Ting, this isn't one. How many copies will you make when you create a book? I guess it's a question to Mark. I mean, will you make extra copies? And that's something we discussed during our previous talks with Mark. So if you are interested in this, just go and watch our previous talks with Mark on our YouTube channel. And there is plenty of information about this. And then in this way, anything can be a book. Yes, well, we already talked about it quite a lot. And there are lots of things.
It's like looking at a picture of a book. You're looking at a book. Yeah. It's not a book. It's a picture of a book. Yeah. But it is a book.
And will you consider the interaction with the readers is a necessary part within your creation of a book, and also interaction with the reader during the creation, during the process of creation is one thing. After the process of creation is a bit different, and we already talked about it a bit.
Yeah, but it is. Yeah, it is one of the things. I mean, for me, the book has to be accessible. I think that's one of the level that I sort of start from or finish at. It has to be accessible. Yeah.
And then Jonathan Morgan writes, "Feel free to pulp anything by Jeffrey Archer," and that doesn't say anything to me.
I've met Jeffrey. I've met Jeffrey. Well, yeah. I mean, again, this is it. This is about your personal likes and dislikes. I mean, it is one of those things. Yeah. I mean, I can't comment because I sort of know him. So moving on.
So you've sent me some photos before the live stream. Do you want to talk about this object, or it's already
I mean,
gone?
Yeah, I mean, you could show one if you wanted, because we're sharing, letting people see it. So.
Okay, let me try. If you will talk a bit with Pavel, and I will fix the thing.
And what exactly it is we are gonna look at?
I've got no idea.
You sent those photos,
I did, but I sent you so many. I don't know which one's going to come. So for me,
so there are 3 folders. Which one you prefer? Which
one? The third one.
First, second, or third?
The one. It's a decision, isn't it? The smaller one with the black insides.
Okay.
Because it's I don't have to talk much about it because it's small.
Let me try to small one. I'm not sure.
This is so professional. What do you want to look at? The small one. It's not that big. I mean, it's.
Wait, you've shown one of them, I think, in during the stream. No.
I'll leave it to you. Whichever one we get,
okay,
I'll be happy with.
I'll try this. Maybe it's the wrong one, but anyway, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, what I could do is I could put the images on my blog site after this. Oh, crikey!
What?
Yeah. Well, this was it.
Not
that's
the one.
Fine. That's beautiful. I think I'm happy to go with the flow here.
Okay.
I mean, this is a diptych, and obviously it's 2 boards from different books, and they're from rebinding jobs. And normally one would throw them away, but I've decided to use them. We've got Instant Age because they're old, and basically it's a little bit of collage. I've got a collection of the Illustrated London News. I've got about maybe 15 sort of year volume books, and I derive sort of images from that. And the title of this is In Another War, which I think is a little bit pertinent for what's happening in today's age. And so it's about looking back to, if you like, the imagery of a Victorian family idly watching death and destruction. That's basically it. So again, and this is collage work. So again, what I've done is hand colored. And the reason that the skin tones are all blue is because if we think about Egypt, the study of ancient Egypt, a lot of the gods and things and people their skin tone is blue because it's comes from Amun-Ra, which is one of the gods, I believe, one of the deities, and it's basically I could be wrong here, of course, but it's basically about people with blue skin. It's a sense of renewal and rebirth and reuse, which again sort of harks back to this particular piece that we're looking at, and it's hand coloured. And that's to the left-hand board, and to the right-hand board, it's a series of black-on-black prints that I've been working on, and that's basically all I have to say about that.
Let's try another one. This one? Was it this?
Oh yeah,
the one.
Well, this is one we just looked at. Yeah, I mean, it is. It's something that I stumbled across by accident. I'm sure other people have done it, and there will be a name for it. But it's where you can actually see, if you get the page, if you like, in a certain position with a certain light on it, the image will come up. It's rather like a daguerreotype. If you know a little bit about photography, if you're looking at a daguerreotype, it will disappear if you hold it at an angle. So again, it's looking at that. And these are just some images that I got from somewhere or other. And again, a couple of old boards reused.
And how do you print those images?
If I told you, I'd have to shoot you. What I'm doing, I'll be straight with you. One of the things is because I'm not sure if I'm sure other people have done it. So I don't want to say, oh, it's something I've developed or whatever. So I'm actually finding out more about it, and then I'll write about it, and then I will explain everything. But until I know what I'm talking about, I don't want to start talking about it. If you don't mind,
it's a teaser.
As a teaser, yeah. So the boards, they've been consolidated. I've used various unctions, lotions, and oils on them to stabilize them, etc., etc. And again, you've got that instant age, but again, it's reusing. It's nothing. This is nothing new. I mean, a lot of earlier books were rebound using old boards to increase their value and all sorts of things. So again, it's there, and the hinging is done with parchment. So the boards are split basically, and the parchment is inserted into the split, and that way you don't get any damage happening to the leather or the paste down papers. It's a recognized restoration repair technique. So again, it's about using techniques that are used in bookbinding, restoration, repair, conservation, etc., but putting it to a different purpose. So that's
not unlike tomorrow's past project.
I suppose you could say that. Yes, why not? Yeah, I'm sure tomorrow's past wouldn't agree with that, but yeah, why not? But yeah, it's about reconfiguring. It's about it's like kintsugi. The repair of stuff. You highlight the repair. I mean, that's been going on for hundreds of years, and I was doing it with paper. When I was at college, because my paper repair technique wasn't that good, and my restoration teacher just kept going, "This is not very good, Mark. I can see the repair still." So I thought, all right, I'll get you. So I just laid some gold leaf on the adhesive, and I said, "Kintsugi, get out of that one." And needless to say, that module I didn't do very well in.
So there is another comment from Adeline: lack of oxygen blue. Relating to the blue faces of this person in this photo as well.
Yeah, it's we all go through phases, and I think this one of the title of this is the title one we were looking at before. I think is Dimension. You've got to give names to things. It's a thing, and the title of this is slightly whimsical. It's called B Movie, the first man on planet acid. And again, what I've physically done is I've used the marbling on the paste down as sort of a view out of the window or series of windows to represent the acid.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just a whimsy, a tiny little thing. But again, it's about, again, reusing, etc., etc., etc. And again,
it also makes me think about spoiler. There is this fancy term for taking pieces of old art and reusing them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Kirchfitters, for example, would be repurposing, and again, Warhol taking something, repurposing it, and it becoming something else. It goes on, and again, it's a couple of old boards. You can see the evidence for those of us who are mildly interested in the evidence of what sellotape and self-adhesive tapes can do to books. There's a classic example, and a wonderful example of sun bleaching. That's how they came to me, and why not? I'm sort of showing it off, saying it's actually there is an essence for me of beauty, of interest in that, and why not do something with it? Why not? Crikey!
Sun bleaching and adhesive tape. That's a recipe for a win.
Oh yeah, for me, I'm looking at that thinking that's beautiful. Yeah, why not? Yeah.
Stepan, could you show us the inside again?
Yeah, just a moment.
I really liked this idea of the end papers being used as this cosmic background. There is an interesting precedent for that. There is
good.
there's like not with books, but with a similar technique. There is like a dozen examples of Renaissance paintings on lapis lazuli.
Yeah.
On a polished stone, and there was recently one very famous fake because they used the polished surface, and it looks like the sea or the sky, and
yes.
Here it also looks like the sky, but of a very foreign planet.
Yeah,
I should visit it sometime.
Yeah, the planet Acid. There you go.
Haven't been for a while.
Yeah. Chill out, relax.
And that's really good. We don't have any monetization whatsoever because we are so small, because otherwise we would have been demonetized right away. So I guess that's it for now, because it's already 100 minutes, hour and 40 minutes we're talking, and it was really nice, and many thanks to Mark for joining us.
Not at all. It's my pleasure. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
As usual, I invite all the current and future viewers, check the links below, check the links to Mark's projects and Mark's pages, and to our Patreon, and maybe to our, I don't know, Facebook, YouTube. Like, subscribe, share, everything you usually do with stuff on social media. And support us on Patreon, and we'll stay for a bit longer, because there is delay between anyway, we'll stay for a bit longer. But anyway, thanks to everyone, thanks to Mark, thanks to Pavel, and see you next time.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you. Bye bye everybody. Bye bye.